Hello, everyone. Welcome back to I'm Still Here. I'm Heather Jose, and I'm excited to announce that I have a guest with me today. If you're new to I'm Still Here, I was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer when I was 26 years old, and that was in 1998. So that kind of changed everything for me, and I think that's the case for most people who are diagnosed with metastatic disease. So I'd like everybody to say hello virtually to my friend Katie. Katie, can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your story?
Yeah, my name is Katie Edick. I'm from Portland, Michigan, and I was diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer in 2016. My story started in the summer of my 40th birthday, and I had taken my first actual vacation on a plane, leaving the kids home, and I just was having some breast pain right here,
Yeah,
and so kind of just above the right breast, and
yeah,
I thought it was anxiety.
sure.
I'm just anxious, I'm leaving my kids, whatever. I thought during that time also, just another little thing was, at the hotel there was bigger mirrors than what I have in my house, which I never thought about.
Okay.
But this nipple actually, the right nipple seemed to kind of be pulling in. So
Yeah.
I just kind of had this feeling like things weren't quite right. When we got back from New York and I had my yearly check, I just mentioned these things to my doctor. And so she did her breast exam and she was like, I don't feel anything, but you're 40. So we're going to send you for your mammogram and I'll add an ultrasound because you have some concerns. And I
Okay.
was like, okay, well, you didn't feel anything and you thought things looked good. So I didn't think about it. And I had never had a mammogram because that
Right.
was my first one. So I didn't know what to expect. So I
Right.
didn't realize where I went, if she scheduled it on the day of the ultrasound, there was actually a radiologist on site
Okay.
and they could do things right away. And so I went and I did the mammogram and then made me wait in another room for the ultrasound. And I'm like, okay, this is just what we were planning.
Yeah.
And I get in there and the lady said, all right, lay down, I'll get you ready. We'll get you all set up. And then the radiologist will come in and do your biopsy. And I was kind of like, I'm sorry, I came
What?
from mammogram and ultrasound, like nobody's felt a lump. And she kind of got a look in her face like, oh crap. And so she left and the radiologist came in and said, I am not letting you leave without doing a biopsy. You have a very angry lump. And so then I just kind of knew like,
Oh my goodness.
yep, this must be breast cancer because you don't tell someone that their lump is angry
Right.
and that you're not going to let them leave.
Right.
Um, so, from there, we went and met with,
Was your husband with you that day, or did you go
no,
by yourself?
no,
You just,
I
yeah.
went alone because I did
Yeah.
not know,
Didn't think it was a big deal.
right, that they could do like a biopsy right away. And so that's
Yeah.
probably like one of the first things I always tell people too. If you're going to go for like a diagnostic mammogram, bring somebody with you.
Yeah.
Because that I think I just did, I was naive. I didn't
Right.
realize nobody explained it.
For sure.
Um, and so it came back, the biopsy came back positive. We met with a nurse navigator who kind of explained what kind of cancer I had. It was triple positive. So
Mm-hmm.
that's hormone positive and then the HER2 new positive.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had to then go back and do the whole like they put you in, it was what's the name of it? It's a breast cancer clinic. So you go in there and you sit in this room with other women that have been diagnosed.
Okay.
And they first went over like, oh, you're going to have surgery. So you might need this,
Oh, okay.
you might need this. And then they put you in a room and then the doctors come through. And so you meet an oncologist, a radiologist, oncologist, and a surgeon.
Wow.
And so in that meeting, they said I was stage 2B.
Okay.
But the oncologist felt like the size was on the cusp. And so she said, I think you're 2B, but I'm going to call you 2C so that your insurance will pay for it. And I want you to have a PET scan. We just want to look at your whole body.
Yeah.
And so I said, okay. And so probably, I think this was on a Wednesday. I think actually a Friday I had the port put in. The following week,
Oh,
I had the PET scan, and that came back that the cancer was in my spine
mhm.
and in my liver.
Okay.
And so we went back to that oncologist, and well, the first time she had told me it was 2B and wrote the words treatable. And, it was like, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, it's going to be okay. And then when we had to meet with her again, and she said, it has spread, and she drew a line through the word,
Oh, no.
um, I'm sorry, she had said the word curable. When I
Okay,
first met with her, she said, this is curable, this
okay.
is what we're going to do, X, Y, and Z. And then when I went back, she said, now that it has spread, it's not curable, but we will treat you, as for as long as we can. And so she had drawn through a line through the word
Terrible.
curable and said I was treatable. And I think that was a huge shock.
Yeah,
And and I don't know if it's becoming kind of in a small town and not going to like a research university initially, but she didn't have any messages of hope or any
yeah,
kind of like, I know this person and
right.
they've been living with it, for XY, like you.
Yeah.
She didn't have any Heathers to say, I know somebody out there who's
Yeah,
been living with it for 25 years.
yeah.
Um, and even then, my first time I went for chemo, I don't know if this happened to anybody else, but you have to sign papers in agreement that you're going to let them put this, you know, chemo in your
Toxic
body. Yeah,
substance.
this toxic, horrible stuff. But it clearly was written on it for mine that it wasn't for curable intent. It was for palliative intent. And I had to
Oh,
sign.
Katie, yeah,
And at that point, I know so much more now, but when I saw the words palliative, to me, that meant hospice.
for sure.
And so here I am, probably so another thing, I was very fortunate. Everything happened really fast for me.
Yeah,
So this was probably maybe 3 weeks from knowing that I had it
okay,
to all of a sudden it's stage 4. It's not curable
yeah,
and it's palliative. And so to me, that was hospice. And so I'm
yeah,
pretty much like, I'm gonna die, Oh,
yeah.
just a second. I'm gonna sorry about that. I
That's
didn't
okay.
forgot to put my phone on mute.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that was really hard because I just was like, you question, why am I doing this? What is this for? How is this going to work?
What did you know about cancer prior?
Nothing. I
Okay.
didn't have any family members with cancer. I didn't have any friends. I
Mhm.
think maybe growing up, my mom had a friend whose child died of like a brain cancer.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so I knew nothing.
Mhm.
Um, I didn't know that there was incurable cancer. I mean, I knew people died from cancer,
Yeah.
but I never knew that some of it would be incurable
Yeah.
or that you would be on treatment for the rest of your life.
Right.
That was such a new concept to me. And I've learned so much more now.
Sure.
Skin cancer is like another one that once you're stage 4, you're kind of in that kind of treatment cycle until it doesn't work.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Tell me about your family at the time.
Yeah, we first sat down with them when I was this is a funny thing, and it's probably the advice I also give people. When you find out you're kind of waiting, they know something's going on because you're acting funny and there's appointments that, you're taking time off, they come home from school and both parents are home.
Mhm.
And so I decided it was a Saturday and I made breakfast.
Okay.
And so clearly I don't make a lot of breakfast, like where we would sit at the kitchen table, but I
Yeah.
did. And I sat us down and I just said, okay, well, mom's been diagnosed with breast cancer. But I'm going to do chemo. And we just talked about how I might lose my hair and be tired and just kind of,
How old were your kids at the time?
Anna was 10 and Drew was 12,
Okay.
I think. Yeah. So we talked to them. they asked questions. There might have been a few tears, just kind of that scared.
Yeah.
And then we just kind of went about our business.
Yeah.
And then when I was diagnosed, it was still the same thing, but once the PET scan came back and it was stage 4, Brent and I had long talks about, hey, do we tell them this? Do we not? And we just decided, I'm not a good liar, even if it's not lying. I'm not really great at withholding.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted I wanted to have that level of trust, and I wanted them to know.
Okay.
And so we just told them that, that mom's cancer was not it was worse than they had thought.
Okay.
And that, I would be on treatment for a really long time.
Okay.
And, but until we try it, we weren't going to know how
Yeah.
it was going to work.
Okay.
And so we kind of went from there, and we just told them, like, this is just what we're going to do. And, after that first scan, I had great results. It was shrinking, and we told them that treatment's working, it's shrinking.
Yeah.
And then when it went, I got to a level where I have no evidence of active disease. I ended up having some radiation to the spots in my spine, so that kind of will show up sclerotic. But they know that it's dead.
Which is why you don't read scans and freak out about them, right? Because they sound terrible, even though,
sclerotic was good, because it meant
it just doesn't sound good.
No, because that part of the bone is dead, so it's dead, of cancer as well, for sure.
Right. Yeah.
And so we would come home and I would tell them scans. And now I went to the word, because they were still 10.
Yeah.
I said the cancer is sleeping and the treatment's working, and I'm going to keep going. And I said, we're going to live our lives, and you really don't have to worry. And I will tell you when there is a need to worry. And so that's kind of, now it's been 6 years. And so that's kind of where it lives. They might ask me if I'm going, like, if I'm not working and I'm going to the hospital, like, is it scan time? And I'll say, yeah, I'll let you know. And I'll come home and, I'll say it's still sleeping. But I found out, I don't know, maybe a month or two, maybe when chemo was done and I had energy again, I decided just to make breakfast. I made breakfast and was setting the table, and the kids came out and they were like, oh my God, what's going on? What happened?
Oh, no.
Yeah. So my kids associate fancy breakfast with bad news.
Bad news. Yeah.
And I didn't know that would happen. And so my advice is to not tie the news to like an event, because that event then becomes triggering.
Yeah.
So breakfast, like cooking a homemade breakfast and having the table set, is very triggering to my kids. And now they're 15 and almost 18.
Yeah.
And they still don't like it, even though I've said, I promise I will never give bad news over breakfast again.
Right. It's your brain, right? That's what their brains learned. And tell them to learn that is impossible. Yeah.
So that's kind of, they've just decided, like, nope, we don't like that.
Yeah.
So I don't do that breakfast.
Well, now you have an excuse to never do fancy breakfast.
Right. Yep. I just can't do that because I don't want to make the.
You should. Is it okay if Brent makes it?
Right. What if Dad does it?
Exactly.
Yeah. We'll go out to breakfast.
There we go. That works too. Yeah.
Yeah. But I never thought doing something like that. I was trying to be responsible and, do something where everyone was sitting together, and I wanted them just to feel love and connection.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but it definitely, it made them think not good, for sure. But I think overall the kids have been very well balanced with the information, and I think because they trust, I come home and tell them, and we haven't had to do we haven't had to have another scary conversation yet.
Yeah.
I do remember one time taking a walk with my son, probably a year after that, because we told him it was stage 4, and that it would just be more treatment. And he said to me, I kind of know what that means, Mom. Like, I know that means, like, that, you're always going to have it. And so we talked about a little bit what that meant and what terminal meant, and that type of thing. And so he was just more perceptive and kind of was ready for that conversation.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah. But I
So,
just, yeah,
oh, I was just going to say, so one of the other things that we have in common is that we're both occupational therapists. And,
yes.
it's kind of interesting that we both have followed similar paths and worked in similar kind of settings. But how do you feel like cancer has affected your work life, career? How do you balance? I don't, balance is a terrible word sometimes, but how do you put it all together?
I think there's always like definitely a balance. I worked, being an occupational therapist, not only are we both occupational therapists, but we both work with pediatrics, so
Yeah.
kids. And I always loved my job, and I really loved helping families and connecting with them.
Hmm.
And so that was kind of I worked through all of my chemo. I just would kind of take off some bad days, but it kind of helped me to be there
Okay.
and, to take my mind off of how I was feeling.
Yeah.
But as some of the symptoms progress, like I can't feel my fingertips. And so as an occupational therapist, we do a lot with our hands and we teach a
Yeah.
lot with our hands.
Yeah.
And so that was a little bit frustrating, like to lose some of that. The neuropathy I've lost some hand strength and that feeling in my hands.
Hmm.
The fatigue and the weakness can be troublesome. I
Hmm.
think I'm fortunate because I do birth to 3, so I don't have that heavy lifting because
Sure.
I don't think I
Yeah.
would be able to do that anymore.
Yeah.
But there are some days where I think, gosh, I don't know if I want to work.
Yeah.
and, and
Yeah.
maybe I want to do something else, or
Yeah.
but I carry the insurance, and so I'm
Okay.
very fortunate because I don't know if you've done a talk on it yet, but obviously having cancer is hugely financially toxic, and
Yeah.
a lot of people go in debt over it. And
Yeah.
currently now we're really lucky because I have wonderful insurance.
Yes.
um but I even looked into going part-time, and the
Hmm.
amount of money I would have to pay in to keep my
Yeah.
level of insurance and the money I would lose on going part-time, like it didn't make sense.
Yeah.
So I think I'm blessed that I feel well enough to work,
Yeah.
but it's also that double-edged sword of sometimes when I have that fatigue and I'm just not feeling great after an infusion, I would
Mhm.
like to maybe not work.
Yeah.
But you don't feel like it's an option.
No, it's really, I mean, it is a huge challenge for so many people, I mean, we could have been in the same boat, except that my husband, you know, is able to carry the insurance at the same, sort of that same kind of coverage like you have. And it's a blessing. It does keep us out of debt, right? To have that
Right.
insurance and to have great options. But yeah, it's really a tough thing. And I think I guess the other consideration with that is that um, I think people sort of forget, and it's not like you're going to remind them every day that you have cancer, you know. But sometimes I feel like too, like, hey, like I'm dealing with a little bit more here sometimes, and even though I've been stable for a long time, you know.
Yeah. The medications, it's that invisible illness that people talk about, or,
Yeah,
some people want to say it's chronic, you're managing it like diabetes, and some people are diabetic and you can't see it. So yes, it has that invisibility component. But the level of women and men who are dying from it makes me feel like chronic is just still not the right word. It is still,
no, absolutely, I agree with that. And
yeah,
also,
it's
I
still
think, I mean,
terminal.
yeah, I mean, chronic things don't change with a scan, right? In the same way, and that's a big difference. I think
For sure.
everybody goes into a scan knowing, that things can change on the other side of
Right.
that.
This could be the one. Yep,
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I think that is, and I think even my kids sometimes when you say about, employers and coworkers wanting to remind them what you're going through. But, there's been, I think
yeah,
I try and be better because I don't want my kids to feel bad. But I think I, one time said to my daughter, like, I love you. I had my treatment today. I'm exhausted.
yeah,
You have to remember,
yeah,
that sometimes I just can't do it all.
yeah. No, I
And
think that's it too. I mean, we kind of want our kids to, be able to put it in the background and all of
yeah,
that, and we don't want it to, but there, I totally can relate to that exhaustion or that, like,
yeah, you
can
don't want
forget.
it, yes, you don't want it to be the forefront of our lives and always
Right,
be, but hey, mom, but
right.
sometimes you
Yeah,
want them to remember, and I think some of that is just that normal teen stuff. It's all about
sure.
themselves and what they need and
Absolutely.
want. And, you know,
Yeah,
you just kind of sometimes have to put that in,
yeah,
into perspective.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, do you want to talk a little bit about some of the things that you've gotten involved with because of metastatic breast cancer? I feel like you've done some really great things, and you're really you're good at getting all of us involved a little bit with some different organizations.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
I think that's part of my personality. Like being the occupational therapist, I'm a forever learner. Like
mhm,
I want to know why the drugs I'm on are working and if something happens, what's my next step? And
mhm,
so that I think the first part was just trying to find conferences because as occupational therapists, we have continuing ed.
mhm,
And so I think I was looking for conferences or ways to learn about cancer. And so I think that's kind of one of the first things I reached out and I found, living beyond breast cancer organization. And they have like a yearly conference at, I think it's usually held in Philly. And
yeah,
so I went to that with two other ladies from Michigan
mhm,
and we met other women with metastatic breast cancer and they had lots of different, sessions. So there
yeah,
was oncologists and nutritionists. And so it was a really nice kind of opening to um, kind of the advocacy world and what different people, what different women that had breast cancer, what they were doing kind of to support themselves and others.
yeah,
Then maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm the only one, but then I also went through like, you know, cancer sucks and it's a crappy thing. What's out there that I could get for free? you know? And so I think when I was doing
you were
Google,
not the only one.
right, like, okay, I have this, shit show.
Yeah,
Let's
yeah,
get something for it, And so I found a couple organizations online that I looked more into and I really kind of believed in their mission. And then I actually met some of the ladies and recognized they were good organizations. And so the one was Hope Scarves, and that was founded by Laura McGregor, who was a native of Michigan.
mhm,
Um, and she sends scarves to people that have any kind of cancer. So it doesn't just have to be breast cancer.
right,
And then her organization also matches research money. So if someone donates and asks it to go for research, they have an anonymous donor that pairs the money. And so I liked, number one, that anybody with cancer could get a scarf. Each scarf is paired with a story.
mhm,
And so it kind of gives this message of hope. And you could return your scarf and they would send it on to somebody else. So that
mhm,
was fun. And then I also got involved with Little Pink Houses of Hope.
mhm,
We went on a vacation to, we were sent to Myrtle Beach, and as a
mhm,
family, we had an awesome time.
yeah,
Unbelievable. We just loved it. And so I decided after doing that I would volunteer because I just really had such a wonderful time.
yeah,
And then the founder, Janine, asked if I would like to lead a retreat. And I
yeah,
said, well, of course.
yeah,
And so now I'm a retreat leader for Little Pink Houses of Hope, and I've led 2 retreats in Sedona, Arizona, and my second retreat in Michigan in Grand Haven will be this fall.
okay,
And so that's an amazing organization. It's a free week vacation to um, women and their families or men and their families that have breast cancer.
mhm,
And the only thing that the families are obligated to do is to get there and if they need like a rental car.
mhm,
And what's nice is when you apply, you pick the weeks like that work for your family and location. So if you know
yeah,
you can't afford a plane ticket, you would pick
good job,
something maybe
yeah,
drivable. Um, and then kind of as it moved on, I decided I liked the research. Or if someone asked me like, hey, will you talk about breast cancer like to Congress or
mhm,
because of this, I would say yes, and then I would learn more about it. So I also help out with the Michigan Breast Cancer Coalition. and it's Michigan based, and it's mostly a small group of women. And their main focus is just trying to provide awareness to Congress, senators and reps, so that they will co-sponsor or vote for bills that will help women, men, people with breast cancer.
Yeah.
And I'm also on a couple just committees through Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, just
Yeah.
trying to lend my voice, being a young woman,
Yeah.
young 40-ish, just trying to give that perspective.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's great. I mean, our paths have crossed in a lot of those different ways. It's really interesting. Janine and I met in a totally different way, Little Pink Houses of Hope. And then it's just funny how some of that,
It's funny how
coincides.
small life, how small.
Yeah, and really the community's pretty small, and that's, I think it's good. It's also can be hard. I mean, Laura died earlier this year, right?
Yep. Yep. Yeah. And two of the ladies one that I went with to that my first time going to metastatic breast cancer conference, Rhonda, who lived in Michigan, she has passed away. And there was someone that I was a social media, that's how we met. So we were always instant messaging. We met each other in person there, and she has passed away. So yes, it is a weird dynamic of that. You meet these women and you want them to have great success like you do, and some don't, and that gets hard of why them and not me, and analyzing like, well, what did they do or what medicines they're on, and you just learn how complicated breast cancer is, and how it's not homogeneous. It's different for everybody, and how their bodies deal with that information.
Yeah. So going kind of to that, are you still on your first line of treatment?
I am. I'm very lucky. I'm in first line treatment. So I do, I go get an infusion every 3 weeks, which is, it's Perjeta. And then I get the biosimilar Kangenti, and that's the biosimilar for Herceptin, because my insurance company said that they didn't want to pay for Herceptin anymore. So,
oh boy.
But I went to like a little webinar. It happened to be out that same time that talked about biosimilars, and there's really no reason that it's not safe and as effective to Herceptin. And so I felt confident in that change. And then I do tamoxifen because I was young, and and you can use that pre and post menopause. And then I do Xgeva for a bone strengthener. Yeah. So first line, but I still listen and look at the research, because that new medication that just came out, it's Enhertu. They were saying during one of the, I did another webinar, and they were saying that that one might even jump up in line. So like, if you think about it, sometimes like you have 5 lines and you're on number 1, and then we'll do this, this, and this. And I kind of have them all written down. But they're saying, that this newest drug that was just FDA approved, the research, it might show that it actually might jump above the second line, which is that TDM1. I think people call it something else too, and it's slipping my mind right now. But
so I'm not the one to ask.
Yeah,
I'm more oh, we just know there's some in the back pocket. We'll call it.
No, I haven't written down so I can ask about them, but everybody deals with it differently, and I think it's my way kind of to have a little bit of control. I went and got a second opinion and a third opinion. I have fired an oncologist because we just weren't clicking. So I feel like, I think that's part of the message too, is you can be somewhat passive if that's kind of how you roll, but you really somewhat need to be more active, because everybody has so many patients, and they're not going to be as vested in it as you. Well,
ultimately, I feel like it's all on us anyway. Like, it's our bodies, right? And we know kind of what's going on in our bodies and how we're reacting to things, even though we need them to use the knowledge that they have, right? But ultimately, I think.
For sure. And I think that's sometimes harder is when you go in there. This last scans right before that, I was having lots of joint pain and fatigue and the neuropathy. And so in the back of my head, I'm like, these scans might show something, because I'm just feeling run down.
Yeah.
the scans showed nothing.
Mhm.
And so I think the staff there expected me to like have a party.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I hear what you're saying, and my brain can hear you, but like the rest of my body is still like saying, like, we're struggling.
Yeah.
And yeah, I kind of got more of like a suck it up message that this is kind of your life. And
Okay.
so, it makes you have to then even think about like maybe going to see like an integrative oncologist,
Yeah.
or adding in, some medications for depression or anxiety,
Yes.
or looking at what is out there to help support joint pain, fatigue, and recognizing that maybe your oncologist isn't the best person
Right.
to monitor that part of your care.
Well, I think there's also that piece of, just because your cancer is stable doesn't mean that your quality of life couldn't be better. And that's
Yeah.
where I feel like sometimes we do, as cancer patients, get the message of just be grateful that you're here and be grateful that you're
Yeah.
alive. And absolutely I am. But it
Yeah.
doesn't mean that my back doesn't hurt, or that, and trying to figure out the level of where that is in terms of,
Yeah. How much
right?
can you, yeah.
Aches and pains. Is it treatable with something else? If we took cancer out of the equation, what would it look like? All of those things.
Yeah. And almost you just want them to give you the choice. Like some people will take gabapentin for
Mhm.
neuropathy, but it
Yeah.
has its own level of side effects. And so as
Absolutely.
a patient, you have to decide, is your neuropathy so bad that
Right.
you're willing to take those side effects and maybe you won't have them? Or
Right.
is it just good to know that it's
Yeah.
there so
Yeah,
that if it
absolutely.
felt so, because right now it's not so bad. And I think you start learning things too. I think it feels worse when it's cold and it's
Yeah.
in winter.
Yeah.
And so, maybe I need to keep hand warmers in my
Yeah.
my-
For
you know.
sure.
So yeah, I think that's also just that learning curve of how to live with it.
Yes. Yeah. But also it's okay to advocate for yourself.
For
You
sure.
know?
Yeah.
um,
Yep.
I agree. I do think that sometimes, doctors, especially, our oncologists, they want it to be stable, and and when we've got that, it's like good, and then
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, but what about this and this? And there's a few other little, concerns. So,
And it is, and I don't. I mean, some people I
Mhm.
think, and maybe some people get mad or frustrated, and I just try to think of it from their perspective. Like
Yeah.
my oncologist could have just walked out of a room and had to tell someone that
Yeah.
they were out of options. Like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
get it. I've seen my friends pass away from cancer now.
Yeah.
So I get that I am lucky and blessed and that I'm
Yeah.
doing
For sure.
well, but if my side effects aren't going well, I want to do something about it. And
Yeah.
if you're not the person to do that, then I'll find the person that can.
Yeah. Well, it's also a challenge, I feel like, with like a PCP, right? I have a primary care provider, but I would be lying if I said that I think she's confident in directing me all the time,
Right.
because it's like, I get it. I'm a complicated case, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
So
for
it is
sure.
always that balance of, and who's the right person to handle these different things. So,
Yep. It is. You kind of have to find a team, and even in like a PCP world, they're sick or they go on vacation, and
yeah.
then you wander in and you get to meet somebody else and they
Well,
look at you and you look young and healthy, and,
yeah.
and then they open your file and are like, oh.
Yeah. I agree. I agree. It's a crazy, crazy thing. So as we wrap up here, do you have any advice or anything that you tell people, any words of wisdom, having lived with cancer for?
I just think for me, what I tell people, and just in general, like sometimes people are like, oh, I don't want to burden you with my stuff. But
Yeah.
I like to tell people, like, your stuff is your stuff. And
Yeah.
that doesn't hurt my feelings, or I want to hear what's going on with you and I want to support you. And that same thing with cancer, like how you're feeling is how you're feeling. And
Yeah.
it shouldn't be minimized. And you're not going to feel the same way I do. And that's
Mhm.
okay. And kind of like we said earlier, to advocate for yourself. And then honestly, I think because we both have a background of kind of in that science, it
Mhm.
gives us a little bit of an edge to understand things maybe.
Mhm.
And there are some that maybe don't understand it at all and don't want to. And I feel like there's always somebody out there that you can find to be a person to help you,
Yeah.
like I would not mind going to a doctor's appointment and listening and asking the questions to help somebody
Right.
if they felt like that was not their area or their gift. You know, if
Right.
you can't process it, and, you know, bring someone to take notes, bring someone to ask the hard questions, you
Right.
know,
Well,
kind of
and
like
even people that are very equipped, can be so emotional, right?
yes,
That you're
yes, and
not
your
really
brain,
hearing, or not, that part of your brain is not
yeah,
really firing. So
especially when it's about yourself. You
absolutely.
know, I loved looking at x-rays and scans of other people, but when that one of my own popped in my portal, I was like, I don't know if I can open this. It's
No.
so weird, like when it's, you know,
Yeah.
when it's yourself. But I think, you know, I think that's the important thing is, I know we always say it takes, and always going back to the pediatrics, you know, we always say it takes a village,
Mhm.
like to raise children, but I really believe it takes a village to live with cancer.
Yeah.
And that as women and men who have stage 4 cancer, and like you said earlier, we're kind of a small group,
Yeah.
um, you know, and that we should help be kind of that village for each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you so much for
Yeah.
coming on today. And honestly, I have plans that maybe you'll come back again, and maybe we'll have another friend or two with us, and we can chat again. I think it's just really helpful for people to be able to hear from people that are still here. And
Yes, for
you know,
sure.
thanks so much for sharing your story today. So,
Thanks, Heather, for having me.
all right.
All right. Mhm.